we're very appreciative every time that Scott Reynolds of pewterreport.com is kind enough to join us on the Goldberg Noon Abraham Law Firm hotline. Scott, my guess is you've got to be like an 8, 9, 10-year-old on Christmas morning for what you have had to put up with this team during your career to get Tom Brady for at least 2 years with this offensive talent around him. Scott, is this Christmas Eve or Christmas morning for you?
It's kind of like Christmas morning, I guess. I mean, I've had the chance to cover some of the best Buccaneers and best football players of all time, guys like Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. When you talk about Buccaneer lore and history, Mike Allstott, players like that. I remember when the Buccaneers traded for Keyshawn Johnson. That was a big, huge national event back, I think, in 2000. The John Gruden trade was a mega deal. The entire NFL audience was captivated by that. But this is some new uncharted territory here. This is bigger than Keyshawn. This is bigger than John Gruden. This is Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time. And, for me personally, to have a chance to cover Tom Brady for a couple of years is pretty exciting stuff, especially after what I've been through for the past decade or so covering a really, really bad football team.
A hard-hitting question that I've really come up with today. Do you think in the Tom Brady tenure that we have to retire the creamsicle jerseys? Because there's something about seeing Tom Brady in that jersey that I don't know if I can take, Scott.
Yeah, I don't think that the Bucs are going back to creamsicles. From what I've heard, and I haven't seen the new uniforms, but from what I've heard, it's going to be very similar to the Super Bowl uniform, very, very similar to the uniform that they had. There was nothing really wrong with before they switched to the 2014 uniforms. They're going to keep the helmet. I think that's the plan. They like the new bigger flag logo, and I think most fans do. I do as well. But they're going to go back more towards a simpler, cleaner Super Bowl look with the red jersey and the pewter pants. That's from what I've been told.
Scott, I know I tried late in the afternoon to get my hands on some tickets, and I was number 6,622 in line on Ticketmaster. I'm guessing now, this will be, this will go back to the glory days, right? Jam-packed, fire the cannons, standing room only on the ship. I mean, so much for those 15 mediocre years in a row, right?
Well, yeah, I think in terms of a fan interest, we saw that yesterday with the huge season ticket spike on Ticketmaster, and listen, it's been a long time since the Buccaneers have really had some buzz. Typically, like a head coaching change is supposed to generate some buzz. And I remember, when Lovie Smith was hired, he was coming from the Bears, where he had been to the Super Bowl, and obviously he had been part of Tony Dungy's organization before his coaching staff as the linebackers coach. So there was some familiarity there and kind of a tie to the glory days. But, what did Lovie do? He went out and went winless at home, 0 for 8. So I think that was like the ultimate punishment for Bucs season ticket holders. And they really didn't have a frenzy over Lovie Smith. He was kind of a boring coach, if you ask me. And his record really reflected that. He went 2-14 in his first year, which he was supposed to be an upgrade over Greg Schiano, and he won half the games. He was 2-14. So yeah, I think that this buzz is good for the Buccaneers. It kind of reinvigorates the fan base. And listen, Tampa is a transient town, right? I mean, there's a lot of transplants here, and but there's always been a hardcore fan base of about, I think back in the day it was probably closer to 30,000, and I think recently it's been about 40,000. But not the 65,000, not the full capacity of ticket holders filling Raymond James Stadium. Now you're going to see the bandwagoners come, back. You're going to see the Tom Brady fans become Buccaneer fans, which is kind of exciting. And listen, this team has lost a generation of football fans with some bad football, and so now they have a chance to really win a lot of people back and create a lot of new fans. And I think that's exciting.
There's no doubt. I mean, it's not just you, Scott. We're stuck with Bucs and Dolphins games in this market every week, and it's been a miserable decade. Yeah. So I'm pretty fired up that I know I can turn on one of the stations, and if the Dolphins happen to draft Tua, we may have a nice little run here, at least short term with Tom, and long run with the Dolphins. So that's a positive for all football fans in Florida.
Hey,
but Scott, let's get to the really big question here, because I don't think getting Tom Brady makes the Bucs better. There is no doubt. The Saints are still the best team in the division. So heading to the draft, Scott, before we thought maybe Tampa would take a quarterback. If they do that now, it's negligence. We know that. They have a 2-year window with Tom Brady, and they have to try to win a Super Bowl. So going to the draft, Scott, what's the most important thing they need? Is it a tackle, or do they need to trade down so they can fill a few spots? It's a good tackle draft. There are good secondary players in this draft. So how would you approach the draft if you were running the Bucs?
Well, if I was running the Buccaneers, it would be the same thing, which is what they're going to do. They're going to draft an offensive tackle, either in the first or second round, draft a running back, and I really believe they're going to probably come away from this draft with 2 or 3 offensive linemen, and I think they're going to come away with 1 or 2 running backs. The focus is going to be on making this offense more balanced. If you look at the Seattle Seahawks, right, they've got a 4,000-yard Pro Bowl passer every year in Russell Wilson. But they also have one of the league's most consistent running attacks as well. And what they do is they draft running backs, and they draft a lot of them. They've even drafted, Pete Carroll's even drafted 3 running backs in one particular year. And what they do is they're not stuck having to make a bad decision, which is paying for running backs. And what I've written about on PewterReport.com is this team, they've got Ronald Jones, great. Draft another running back. And in a year or 2, spend another premium pick on another running back. And as these running backs get a bunch of carries and wear and tear, and they turn 26 years old, 27, they hit free agency, let them go, and keep that draft cycle going for running backs. The problem is when you start paying guys, when you start paying a Todd Gurley and he wears down, when you pay a Doug Martin after a big 1,400-yard season and he never even comes close to rushing for 1,000 yards again. Ezekiel Elliott is kind of like a rare breed, and sometimes you have a running back who's like an Adrian Peterson type that can continue to produce at a high level as the years go on. But more often than not, that's not the case. Look at Melvin Gordon. I don't think there's a market for him. And deservedly so. So I think the Bucs draft a running back or 2 and really try to create a more balanced offense. I think Bruce Arians saw that throwing the ball 600 times for 5,109 yards last year creates an awful lot of opportunities for interceptions. And now you got a quarterback in Tom Brady that's not going to throw 30 this year. Tom Brady's only thrown 29 interceptions combined over the last 4 years. He threw 8 last year, but you don't want to put all of the world and all of the weight of this offense on his right arm, especially at age 43.
He's Scott Reynolds of PewterReport.com. PewterReport.com. Follow him on Twitter at PewterReport. Do you think the Bucs are in the Trent Williams sweepstakes? Reportedly, the Redskins would take a second-round pick. Now, you're going to have to throw a little bit more money onto his pile. That's what he wants. But do you think the Bucs are in on Trent Williams?
I don't know. And what kind of complicates the matter is right now that the NFL's rules where you can't travel. So this is a player that has had a serious medical condition and has been out of football. And so I don't know that the Bucs want to part ways with the second-round pick on something sight unseen. If the guy can't even take a physical and be examined by team doctors, whether it's the doctor flying to Trent Williams or Trent Williams flying to Tampa, that's been prohibited. So I think right now I would not think about investing a draft pick in Trent Williams until I found out what exactly his medical situation is, and if he can pass the physical, and to really kind of dive deep in that, because cancer is a scary thing, and so I wouldn't do it. He's a talented player, but he hasn't played in a minute, and I think this coronavirus situation has kind of paralyzed the league from a travel standpoint, and until I had some of those medical answers cleared up, I would not make that trade.
I'm with you on drafting the running back, Scott, but David and I were talking about this earlier. Don't they have to go out and find one in free agency? Don't they have to find a pass-catching back? I mean, Tom Brady has survived on pass-catching running backs the last half-decade. James White catches 80 balls a year because of Brady. So they don't have that right now, and I would worry if I'm the Bucs thinking I'm going to get that in the draft.
This is a pretty deep draft, and that's why I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucs drafted two running backs, one either, in round 2 or 3, and then another one on day 3, maybe in rounds 4 or 5. Guys I'm talking about are DJ Dallas from Miami, who should be around on day 3, or Cam Akers, who could be there in the 3rd round. We've all seen the Bucs connected to guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
There you go. I really believe that to me. Yeah. That to me, Scott, the Bucs' ideal draft is he's sitting on the board in the 2nd round for them, because his style of running, but his ability as a pass catcher, to me, he might catch 80 passes as a rookie from Brady.
No, you're exactly right. And you look at James White. You look at some of those running backs that Brady's had to throw the ball to. And he likes having that running back out of the backfield that can make a guy miss and pick up 10, 11, 12 yards and move the chains just on like a little swing pass, little outlet pass. So, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that they're – and you know what? Listen, I wouldn't be surprised. The Bucs love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I wouldn't be surprised if they make their first-round pick at number 14 and get an offensive lineman, and then – trade back up into the 1st round and secure someone like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And that really fits into what I was talking about before, which is draft a running back, right? And when you draft one in the 1st round, you have the right to pick up that 5th-year option. So you can get a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I think is 21, and then you have him for 5 years, then he's 26. And if he's the next Adrian Peterson or Ezekiel Elliott, then, yeah, you might think about giving him a 2nd contract. If not, 2 or 3 years from now, you draft his eventual replacement. And I think as long as you can follow that Seattle Seahawks formula and continue to draft running backs and use some premium picks on them, because think about it. All these people that suggest, well, you never spend a 1st-round pick on a running back or a high pick. Listen, go look at all of the 1,000-yard rushers from last year. Half of them were 1st-round picks, and the other half were comprised mostly of 2nd or 3rd rounders. So it's a little bit of an anomaly what we saw in last year's Super Bowl, right, where you had Raheem Mostert and Damian Williams. Both of those running backs were undrafted free agents. We'll look at the previous year, the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Rams. Todd Gurley was a 1st-round pick, and so was Sony Michel for the Patriots. So probably 80% of all of the Hall of Fame running backs were 1st-round picks.
Scott,
so
quickly.
If you can find a good one, go for it.
Scott, quickly, not just whatever Tom has left at 43, but from a leadership standpoint, how big of an upgrade is this at that position for the Bucs?
It's huge. As much as Jameis Winston was liked, he was not a winner, and he was a winner at Florida State. That was Florida State. This is a different league. This is the NFL. Nobody has won more games in the regular season at quarterback position than Tom Brady. No other quarterback has won as many playoff games as Tom Brady. No other quarterback has won as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady. He was brought here to Tampa to win, to show this young football team how to stop beating itself and win, not just on Sundays, but in practice, in the meeting rooms, in the locker rooms, how to be a professional, how to conduct yourself as a professional. This team has two very good leaders on defense. Both those guys, Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul, have Super Bowl rings. Levante David has been a very good leader during his tenure in Tampa Bay. On the offensive side, they've got some very good players, but none of these guys know how to win. And Tom Brady steps in that huddle with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Donovan Smith and Ali Marpet and Ryan Jensen and O.J. Howard and Cam Brate and Ronald Jones, and he knows how to win. And the players will learn from him. They will feed off of him. And Tom Brady was brought here to throw less interceptions, make more plays, but more importantly, show this young Buccaneer team how to stop beating itself and win and get to the playoffs and enter the Super Bowl tournament, which has been a long time coming in Tampa Bay.
He's Scott Reynolds. Follow him at Pewter Report and get his work at pewterreport.com, pewterreport.com. Scott, as always, we appreciate your time and soak up these next few days.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Scott Reynolds,
good stuff. Thank you.
pewterreport.com, and follow him on Twitter at Pewter Report.